my name's Noel, I'm a psychotherapist. Welcome. Here I am with, who are you?
I'm Judy Crane.
Judy Crane.
Yes.
Really good to meet you.
Good to
really
meet
good
you,
to meet
Noel.
you. So what do you do, Judy?
I'm a psychotherapist.
Uh-huh.
I'm a trauma specialist. Work with addictions, trauma. That means substance abuse, process addictions,
Yeah.
behavioral issues.
Yeah.
But the core of everything that I do is trauma.
Okay. And what brought you into this field? What's your sort of story?
Well, I am in recovery 30 years, and
Wow.
in my addiction, I created a lot of damage and
Sure.
insanity and chaos. And when the light finally shined on me, and I found recovery, I recognized that it was important for me to be able to give back what was given to me.
Okay.
Someone helped me, and it was my job then to be able to pass that forward.
Right. And so you decided to train as a therapist because of this urge to sort of give back and help people get what you've got, I suppose.
Well, I started out just being a really good recovering person, doing service work.
Okay.
And then, interestingly enough, it kept coming to me. People kept asking me to, be a counselor. Here's a job. And I resisted,
Mm-hmm.
and I resisted,
Mm-hmm.
and I resisted,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got fired from my waitressing job.
Inevitable.
Inevitable.
Absolutely inevitable. Brilliant.
I was a waitress with a degree, and
Yeah.
I was devastated because I'd never gotten fired in my addiction.
Sure.
So here I'm in recovery doing the next right thing, and I get fired. And so I had a wonderful mentor who said, well, it's time for you to go back to school.
Yeah.
And she worked with me for a long time, pushing me in the right direction, getting the right classes, doing the next right thing. And in a very short time, I got the opportunity to work with some folks in the criminal justice system, some men who were in big trouble. They were going to go to prison forever if they didn't find recovery.
Yeah.
I got to work with them. And then I got to work with pregnant and addicted women, which was a really powerful piece for me because in my addiction I had been using a different drug with each child. And the amount of guilt and shame and remorse that came with that.
Absolutely, yeah, right.
It was overwhelming, and I never thought that I would be able to be relieved of that. But every woman I worked with who was pregnant was feeling the same way. And what I was able to do for them was just be the power of example that said, you can move beyond this. And when I was able to let them know what kind of children I had and how my children had not only survived, but had flourished as a result of my recovery, then it was possible for them to think that they could do it for themselves.
That's great. I mean, I'm really touched by your humility, just the power of example, but I think you're more than that as well. I mean, I know you have the power of example. You've been doing that for 30 years, and that's extraordinary and inspiring to hear, but you're also very grounded and very skilled and very knowledgeable professional as well. And I think one of the things that strikes me about the work that you do, and having visited the guest house as well, is that there is that integration of the best of sort of the humility of 12-step approaches, but then the best of the sort of technical approaches from psychotherapy as well. And that's really seems to me very strong as a message at that centre. And I guess that's coming from you. You must be the source of that.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it, probably because I'm the oldest there and have been around the longest time, but what I recognized in recovery, which is what's important, and I think which just explains what you're saying, is that in the rooms of recovery, I would walk in and see people who were struggling, who were relapsing, or who were angry, had 30 years sober, but were angry as all get out, or who were gambling or in relationships and struggling with that piece, but they were sober, or they were relapsing over and over again. And it occurred to me that there was something else there was more there. And that's when I started really being alert to how many people had these deep, dark secrets, the pain of trauma, oftentimes that a fourth step was just not sufficient for them to get to.
Just for the folks at home who might not be aware of 12-step philosophy, fourth step is what's known as the inventory, where people look at their own personal history, the baggage that they're carrying, if you like, and unpack it and look at
positives and negatives and work towards their sort of positives. That's the sort of philosophy. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what I was looking at I was working with women by then who had been struggling with things like sexual abuse and domestic violence, or the loss of their children, or any number of things, medical issues. And every time they would get sober, they would be uncomfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
And that uncomfortability was a result of not having those behaviors to keep them, it sounds crazy, but grounded, or give them soothing, or give them relief or release. And
it's not crazy. That's what a healthy child learns normally in healthy interaction with, as an infant, with their caregiver. If that's not there, then you do look crazy as an adult.
Yes, exactly.
And you turn to really insane things to try and replace it.
Really insane things. When I was a child, and there were crazy things going on in my house, and there was chaos, and there was arguing or someone punching a wall, my first response would be to run downstairs and make a sugar sandwich.
Yes.
Now,
Blimey, I remember those. We had sugar sandwiches.
Sugar sandwich.
Absolutely, yes.
And so what did, now I know the sugar sandwich was like, all of a sudden the brain chemistry changed. The serotonin went up, the dopamine went up.
I'm just going to interrupt you there. Now that's what I'm talking about. Is this woman knows all this stuff, but doesn't have to say it all the time. It's there in what you're doing.
Yes.
The background that you have, the scientific, the technical, the psychotherapeutic background you have, is there. It's embedded in everything you're doing.
Yes.
And it's not just sort of made up. This is evidence-based stuff.
Evidence. And it's evidenced in our life. And there's
That's
there's not a person that sits in front of me that we can't do this. Because even very sane, very healthy, very well people have behaviors that help them to stabilize, to be okay.
That's right.
And they're there. And when you're struggling with the disease of addiction, they're more pronounced.
Yeah.
They're more pronounced, and they are. Sometimes it appears that you can't even. It doesn't make sense. But what I say is that when you unravel the trauma story, the behaviors always make sense. Okay. They always do.
And then we can begin to tell ourselves a new story, which enables us to be in the world in a much more effective and healthy way.
Yes.
And a way that, as you said, becomes comfortable internally. We were talking earlier on about this idea of finding a sense of self, an authentic sense of self, and then being able to sort of be available to operate from that place, but also to do that sensibly. And this is what I like, is that it's not sort of rah positive psychology you're offering. It's real stuff in real world. And you said to me, we were chatting over dinner, and you said to me, and I was saying, I'm really grateful I found my true self. And you said, and you're careful about who you share that with, aren't you?
Yes.
And that is right.
Yes.
That's absolutely right. And learning those appropriate sort of antennae and radar that tell us when we're in a safe situation and a not safe situation. Because I guess those of us who were brought up in dysfunctional childhoods, and I was, our radar is, the settings are direct us to the mountainside to crash into.
Exactly.
We have to find a way of not crashing into that mountainside again.
Yes, because I will always crash into the mountainside.
That's right.
I will always.
And then learning how not to do that is a real sort of gift. But there is an excitement, I think, when you first learn how to do that, to then want to go and crash in the mountainside again for some reason. So we do need that cautionary voice. So I know you sort of you say something humble about it just because I've been around long enough, but there is something about wisdom that can't be bought. It has to be earned, and you've earned wisdom.
Yes.
And I've met your son, so I know you have.
Yeah.
And I met him just before chatting to you, so you have wisdom. Now that's what's on offer here, is experience. I think of wisdom as experience integrated. And then you can verbalise in understanding, put it into action. And that's what you're going to get when you're coming here. Unfortunately, I'm coming to the end of this interview. I could actually never leave. Because when I walked into your home, which is where we are, I told you my heart rate dropped.
Yes.
It's immediately calming and healing being in here. And I'm aware I've got to rush off to get a plane and stuff like that. And I get angst about driving and travelling, and that's okay. All of that stuff is okay. I can notice it. But I'm here in your home, and my heart just went down. And that's right there in the guest house as well when I was there.
that sense from everybody that this is a home. It's not a treatment centre. It is, of course, a treatment centre, but it's a home, isn't it?
No, it's a home. And I mean, it really is a home.
Yeah.
And as we, when we opened, because I've done this before, when we opened, I watched what our guests did, and they did exactly that. They made it their home, and they made each other their family, which is really important when you're doing therapy, because we bounce off of each other's stuff. And they made each other family. And I watched who was being the caretaker, who was watching after the person who was not doing so well, and who was having anxiety and a little bit of anger with the other person, and were they able to announce it, and being in that family setting, making it a home is probably the best kind of treatment center there could be.
Yeah. So I'm going to encourage you to come home to the Guest House.
Thank you.
Really lovely to see you. Thank you for inviting me into your home.
Thank you so much.
What a sort of very healing and loving experience. I feel quite close to tears at the moment, which is slightly embarrassing, but there you go. I'm very English. I get embarrassed by these things. So, but it's really beautiful. I'm very touched by you and by this environment. It's really sort of capped off my experience of being in America this time.
Well, please come and see us anytime.
Yeah.
And as you know, my house is open.
Thank you.
We have a guest room. Yep.
I'm coming back. Definitely. Bye, London. See you soon.